Welcome to session 17 of Living and Dying. My name is Sering. Ross and Zangmo are our tech support today. It's so wonderful that you can join us in our journey into the realms of death and dying, and while we also learn how the knowledge and experience we gain really enhances our day-to-day life. We begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and other lands, and recognise their connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Today we are continuing with Chapter 4 of Living as Dying, How Buddhists Prepare for Death. Our guest speaker, Dr. Julie Kidd, will be with us soon. And during this session, we request you to not enter your questions or comments in the chat box. Please wait until the end of the session when there'll be time for questions and discussion. We're now going to turn to the book. Take Refuge and Generate Bodhicitta. So Rinpoche says, for Buddhists, the simplest answer to the question, how should I prepare for death, is to take refuge and arouse bodhicitta. Jacob has already covered these topics extensively in sessions 9 and 10, including a simple Buddhist refuge ceremony that we can undertake at home or as the time of death is approaching, as well as the ceremony for taking or refreshing the Bodhisattva vow. We also discussed at that time how refuge for a non-Buddhist person might be their belief in their religion or simply the greater good, the source, or a kind and loving heart. Rinpoche goes on to say that for the Buddhist, the foundation of your preparation for death is to take refuge, which will introduce you to much of what you need to know and do. Our refuge practice is what lays the foundation for us to connect with the Buddha Dharma in this and the next life. Refuge is the very heart or core of our connection to the Dharma, and something that becomes an integral part of our being and our way of life. When our refuge is firmly established in our mind stream, the imprints will naturally carry over into future lifetimes. Next, Rinpoche reminds us, as we discussed in the previous chapter on Bodhicitta, by arousing Bodhicitta and thinking big, you will find the courage and determination to continue working towards your goal of enlightening all sentient beings, including yourself, come what may. Your willingness to die and be reborn billions of times to continue helping suffering beings will put death into perspective. When you are then faced with your own death, instead of being a huge obstacle, it'll be little more than a minor setback. As you get closer and closer to death, think about and contemplate bodhicitta as often as possible. Initially, it may feel fake, but only because you don't believe you are capable of arousing genuine bodhicitta. In this frame of mind, it's easy to feel disappointed in yourself, to feel like a fraud. Rinpoche strongly, stop thinking like that. All you need in order to generate bodhicitta is the desire to make others happy, and you have that desire. You are generous and you are kind. You have made other people happy many times throughout your life, and making others happy has made you happy. Remember it all because it proves that you have the ability and capacity to want to make all sentient beings happy. Trust that ability. Arouse and develop that wish to help. There will, of course, be times when you long to drive your BMW down a German autobahn one last time, or Catching sight of a much-loved suitcase, you may long to visit India before you die. I think that speaks to many of us. Or wish you could live long enough to see your pretty chubby niece or lanky nephew get married. At such times it is important to contemplate absolute bodhicitta. And as we've heard in the last 2 sessions, as death approaches, it's so important to let go of making plans and to try to reduce our hopes and fears. So Rinpoche goes on to speak about absolute bodhicitta. It will be difficult to think about absolute bodhicitta while you are dying and at the moment of death, so think about it while you are still alive. And Rinpoche now gives some profound statements for us to contemplate, so let's do that together. So sitting comfortably, life is a projection, life is a mirage. Meaning it's there, but it's not there. Life is a projection, life is a mirage. The next one is death is a projection. Death is an illusion. Just as life is like a mirage, so is death. Death is a projection. Death is an illusion. Birth is a projection. Birth is a dream. And so our dream or illusion continues from one life to the next. Birth is a projection. Birth is a dream. This very existence is a projection. This existence is a dream. There, but not there. Refuge has often spoken about life being like a movie. And the funny part is that we are the authors of our own story. We make our own movie. This very existence is a projection. This existence is a dream. Even the taste of coffee is a projection. Even coffee is an illusion. While practicing these contemplations, remind yourself of the illusory nature of samsara, however contrived or fake it feels. Ideas often feel fake until you get used to them. Faking it is the best preparation for the moment of death, and at death you really will have to summon up all your courage. Remembering that life is as illusory as a dream will help make life and death seem little more than a nightmare. Life and death are illusions, but that does not mean that they do not exist. Coffee tastes of coffee, not orange juice. Gold is gold, not brass. To accept that life and death are illusions is to acknowledge that everything we see and feel is a human projection. Coffee is not coffee to a beetle. Orange juice is not orange juice to a camel. Gold holds no value for a dog. Some projections may seem valuable while others appear worthless, and you must distinguish between the two based on values you learn through human projections. When, finally, you truly wake up to enlightenment, you will realize that everything you have experienced throughout trillions of lifetimes was just a dream. It's like pouring cold water into boiling water. This kind of contemplation helps. So realization doesn't come without effort, and it's recommended to practice sitting with these contemplations regularly. We can also experience the peacefulness and spaciousness of the absolute bodhicitta with the dissolution of the elements in the death meditation that Annie Langsam guided us through last week. And for those engaged in sadhana practice, the dissolution stage is another example. So focus on your spiritual practice. If you are lucky enough to know that you will almost certainly die within a year or a month or a week, then of course you must concentrate on your own practice. Focus on the easiest practices because as you're about to die, you won't have time to learn a new philosophy or get used to a new technique or anything like that. For you, the most important practice, which also happens to be the easiest and most compatible with all beings, is to surrender to the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha by taking refuge. And if you are a Mahayana practitioner, arousing Bodhicitta. Engage wholeheartedly in these practices and say prayers of aspiration. And we'll be covering aspiration in our session next week. If you happen to be a tantrika, offer your body in Kusali practice while you're still alive. This is especially good. Be practiced because Kusali is similar to the practice of transferring the consciousness at the moment of death, or poa. Here Rinpoche gives links to the short Nondro practice of Kusali from the Longinintic Nondro and the longer version, the loud laugh of the Dakini. For those engaged in sadhana practices, Guru Yoga, receiving the four empowerments and the dissolution, merging one's mind with the Guru's mind over and over, will bring many blessings at the time of approaching death. We are now coming to the end of chapter 4. The next sections, distribute your worldly goods, we covered in session 8, and get used to the idea that death is imminent, was covered in session 13. So now I would like to warmly welcome our dear Dharma sister, Dr. Julie Kidd, to share with us the story of her encounter with death, her application of refuge and bodhicitta practice in ICU, and her recovery and rehabilitation, where practices similar to Kusali and Chod have played an integral part.
Thank you, Surima.
And I'll just speak a little bit about Julie. Hey, Julie.
There you go.
Dr. Julie Kidd is a GP, a medical hypnotherapist, and a Vajrayana practitioner. The realms of life and death, mind and body, have always been woven through her professional life. But when her 3-year-old son had strong premonitions of his own death in an accident, death came right to her door. And then it came again some years later when Julie suddenly had a hemorrhaging brain tumour that took her to intensive care, and looking death directly in the face. She survived thanks to an excellent surgeon and Songtse Khyentse Rinpoche and the prayers of Sangha. Since then, Julie has written a book, The Mind of Healing, to help people use their minds effectively to have agency in their own healing. And thank you so much for joining us, Julie, and I'll now hand over to you.
Okay, thank you. This is terrific opportunity for me. It's just so rare that there are any people who want to hear about death or preparing for death. So all of you are so rare. It's wonderful. Anyway, I hope that you find my experience somehow useful to you. So I'm here as a cautionary tale. Any one of us can find ourselves suddenly facing death. When I was thinking about what I talk about tonight, I looked up how common is sudden death. And it's actually about 25% of all deaths. So that's, heart attacks, strokes, falls, car accidents, other accidents, all that kind of thing. It's actually pretty common. So my story, I was a fit and healthy 53-year-old doctor and mother who used to walk around the hills of Sydney every morning before work. I was busy seeing patients, running my business, studying energy healing, and doing a bit of Dharma practice. 2 weeks before I landed in hospital, I went on retreat with Zonza Khense Rinpoche. But amazingly, I only went for the weekend, not for the whole retreat, because I was busy and I went back to work. My diary was full of appointments and plans, and I was too busy to die. Of course, I knew I would die one day, but not yet. So I'll tell you what happened. I'd been feeling unwell for a while, and then one Sunday night, I suddenly felt really dizzy. I sat down, closed my eyes and breathed and waited for it to pass. And it did eventually, and I went to bed. When I woke up, I vomited, but then I felt kind of okay, so I went off to work. It happened again on Wednesday morning, and as I was walking up the hill to work, I felt surreal. Like literally, I felt like I was in a movie. I actually made an appointment that day to get a CAT scan on my brain, and I made an appointment to see a neurologist, but I just kept going. That night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I had a sudden strong thought, I'm dying. And I just sat bolt upright in bed. Okay, problem solved this. And so I thought, okay, well, I call an ambulance. What am I going to say to the ambulance driver? I have a thought. You can't do that. I thought, well, I drive up to the hospital. What if they put me in? The car will be stuck at the hospital. Will I wake my 17-year-old son up? No, he's got uni tomorrow. I don't want to worry him. Will I leave him a note? No, that's a terrible way to wake up. So anyway, I'm just telling you all these details to show you where my mind went. You know, like I'm in this crisis, but I'm trying to problem solve it just with my ordinary head. Anyway, it all was too much, and I lay down and went to sleep. On Thursday, I was walking along and I was swaying, and I looked down at my feet and they were tracking wide apart. I went, oh, wide-based gait. That's my cerebellum. You know, it's like a diagnostic thing of cerebellum troubles. So I was able to consciously override this thing that was going on with my feet, and I could get my feet to track together. So I went to Woolworths to pick up some groceries for dinner. Just keep going. It's amazing how the habits of mind and expectation and identity and just what's next just has a momentum all of its own, no matter what else is going on. So on Friday, I went up for my CAT scan, and I had to walk past a cafe just before I got to the radiology centre. And there are all these people sitting out at tables in the sun, having breakfast, having coffee, having a chat. It was a gorgeous day. And I was desperate to be one of them and not one of me, the one who was going to see what the hell was in my head. So as I was lying there on the CAT scan machine, it became just like a total thing. The radiographer can see what's in my head. Soon I'm going to see it, and there's just no getting out of this now. So I looked at the scan with the radiologist. He was talking me through it, And he said to me really quietly and seriously, you need to get to the hospital. I didn't live far away, so I drove home to get sorted. So the skull is a closed box of bone, and the only hole is in the bottom where the spinal cord joins the brain. When the pressure in the skull reaches a critical point, I had a hemorrhaging mass in my head, so the pressure was just still building. And when that reaches a critical point, it actually squeezes and forces the bottom part of the cerebellum down through the hole. And that's called coning, and it means death. So I went to pack a bag. But what do you pack for a day or a week or forever? Then I went to email. I went to email Lama Cyril to ask her to pray for me. And I said, this is too much alone, of course. I emailed some of Zon's Cancer Rinpoche students to ask for prayers. And I emailed my family to let them know what was happening. Then I grabbed a taxi and rang my son, Josh, from the taxi so that he would meet me there. And I walked into emergency with my CAT scan under my arm. And I was walking, talking, and dying. But I didn't look sick. So it was actually, it took a long time to get the level of attention that I actually required. By the time I talked my way into the serious side of the emergency department, and the neurosurgeon on call was right in front of me, I was vomiting effortlessly. That's a really bad sign. He gave me huge doses of steroids on the spot to decrease the swelling in the brain so that it would be safe enough to operate the next day. So I had 24 hours to face life, death, or disability. I was wheeled into intensive care, and I sat there on the bed with Josh and wrote out my bank passwords and all the things he would need to continue his life while I wasn't there. We had a big hug before he left. So I know he's on the call tonight, so I'm a little bit mothery about how this is affecting him. Anyway, he's a big boy now.
I was there the first time. This time's not so bad.
Hello, darling. So I think I actually said to him, I'll be fine. You know, that way that parents have of just being reassuring automatically. I was really seriously not fine. So I'd started the day in charge of my life and ended up lying in the bed in intensive care right next to the nurse's station so they can keep an eye on me, and being woken up every hour during the night so that I wasn't quietly slipping into death. This sudden and total loss of control was such a shock that it largely stopped the train of thoughts. It was just simply too big to even worry about. So I actually just slept. Next morning, my friend Robin brought in a do-it-yourself wilt kit, which I'd asked her for the night before. And so I was sitting up between people on ventilators, actually, finally writing out my will. I'd never got around to it before, too busy. So then I had the whole day lying in intensive care, watching all these poor people in comas and wrecked and on ventilators and their poor terrified relatives. And I just cried. And I prayed that they'd all be okay, that they'd be relieved of their fear and pain and anguish. And that not just us, I mean, we were lucky. We're sitting in the best hospital in Australia in intensive care, like everyone's looking after us. There's so many others that no one's looking after. So my heart just completely broke open. And I had this strong thought, if I die, I won't be needing my organs. Give them away. Someone else could live. And I called the young nurse over and asked her to write in my chart that if I didn't make it, that I'd like to donate my organs. So I'd never registered as an organ donor before because of worries about the interference in the dying process. But really, this feeling was so strong, it just overrode all of my fears. So I am now registered as an organ donor. I don't know if it's right for everyone or anyone really, but it was certainly true for me. So in my 20s, I used to work in neurosurgery and in intensive care. That's part of my medical training. I think I was a kind young doctor, but separate, like I was young and healthy and I was at work and the people were my patients and they were my work and my job was to keep them alive. But it's very different being horizontal in intensive care. And lying there amongst everyone really, really brought home the reality of dying to me. Anyway, we're all in this together. My dear friend Annie Dye rang and told me that the lamas were praying for me and that they told me to pray and to rest in refuge. So I did my best. That night, I dreamed I was on retreat in Brazil. There was actually a Drubchen going on at the time at Kadro Ling, where prayers were being done for me. And in the dream, as I opened my mouth to chant, no sound came out. But in my body, I had an endotracheal tube down through my vocal cords. So it was like my worlds were overlapping. Pardon me. The surgery ended up being delayed a few days because the drugs worked really well. And I was now bumped down the list. I was not most likely to die. I was a few back in the queue. There were other people who turned up since I had. So the night before I actually had the surgery, I had my last meal of cheese sandwiches and tea. I wish I'd really, really appreciated them because it turned out to be my last meal. I actually was tube fed for 6 months after that. So the surgery was going to be really deep into my brainstem, where all the basic functions of life are: heart rate, blood pressure, breathing center, swallowing. Bad, it's bad. I was blown out of my tiny mind. There was nothing for me to do or think. And I just prayed and rested like a child. Before I did go into surgery, the next morning, Josh was sitting with me on the bed. And I asked him that when I came out to remind me that this is just a dream. I really, really wanted to experience this whole thing from that platform of reality and not from my usual one, where this was a really big deal. So my skull was sawn open, my brainstem was shaved down and burned. It took 6 hours. Then when I did come out of recovery, Josh was right there, and he said, "It's a dream, Mum," and held my hand. And I squeezed his hand. It was like, oh, what a relief. It's a dream. I'm still alive, and it's really an epic dream. So when I woke up more in intensive care, I couldn't see, speak, swallow, or breathe properly. And I was put back on the ventilator. I dreamed that I was in retreat in Brazil. I told you that. So in spite of my body health, I was okay. I didn't die and go through the tunnel. It wasn't an out-of-body experience, and it wasn't hallucinating. I was having an in-body experience of bliss and awareness. I think it's the same or similar to what some palliative care people call near-death awareness. My brain was really swollen and totally unhooked from its patterns of perception and patterns of thought. And my eyes were cross-eyed from the surgery. It damaged all the eye muscles. And so my whole field of vision was like looking through a kaleidoscope. So all of that is to say, everything of my normal habitual everything was disrupted. And so I was just there as an organism experiencing sensations, and as a heart that loved without obstruction, and as a mind that was in direct contact, communication with all the wisdom beings who were keeping me company. Somehow I'd landed in a subtle realm of consciousness where my whole body-mind was resting in and permeated by this vast golden ocean of profound blessings. I could see my lamas and deities. I could hear the hum of mantra and prayers being done for me. All of this was influencing my whole body and mind. Never think that your prayers are wasted. They're real. For a while, I was floating in and as pure light. I was so safely and completely held that I could just rest in trust. At the deepest level of my being, it was an experience of being in the ultimate good hands. So my main teacher, Chagdud Rinpoche, had passed into parinirvana 7 years before, and he never left me. I experienced that he was like standing in the middle of my mind, never separate. Even though I was just full of tubes and my head everywhere, totally helpless, I actually felt like I had a warrior's bearing, a sense of being upheld. And I had his courage. I'm not a brave person in my life, but his courage was my courage. I was okay. I had the courage being there in this, in what was true. And I had this deep knowing that no matter what, live or die, I was totally fine. I was home. The truth of me was completely well, no matter what it looked like. I prayed over. Sorry, I'm going to cry on you all. I prayed over and over that everyone who experiences such hellish circumstances is also held in refuge. I mean, I think the way it works, it's actually just the way it is, that we all are. But I pray that they know it and can rest there. So one day I actually got a practice run at dying. As I was immersed in this sense of all-loving presence, I became aware that there was an edge of meanness out in space. It wasn't at my skin, but just a fine edge somewhere out in space. I didn't know if that edge actually meant that I was at the edge of bodily death, or if it was just the edge of me, the identity. I hesitated, and then I just completely let go at the edge of like I, the experiencer. I can't actually tell you what happened next because I have no memory of it. It was like there was no happening. But out of that space came a movement of mind. This movement of mind was just a movement of compassion. And that formed into an impulse to stay in this life, in this body, in order to relieve suffering. And as there was kind of a returning subtle sense of I-ness of the heart, there was a surge of joy. And I had a very strong thought. And I want to have more fun with Josh. And we did. We've had another 13 years of fun, Josh and I. It's incredibly fortunate. Somehow I knew from this compassion experience that compassion is absolutely primary, that it really is our nature, all of us. It's the bedrock of our being. It's amazing for myself how much other rubbish gets in front of it, really. Now, while we're talking about preparing for death, I'd like to tell you, and especially tell me over and over, what not to do to prepare for death. So while I was drifting between worlds, I had a really clear memory of my last death. I was a middle-aged monk in Tibet, walking through the monastery, and I was really angry about some political situation. I don't know what. I went outside the monastery to a storage area, and 3 men with poles came in and bashed me. And I was fighting and angry, and they were bashing, and I was dying. And as I realized I was dying, it was just this fury that I directed up to the Dharma protectors, why aren't you protecting me? And then this horror and regret. My last thought before I died was this utter regret that I spent my whole life doing Dharma practice and died like that, angry with the Dharma protectors, and then gone. That was it. I won't make that mistake again. Somehow, I knew that this was the primary cause of my tumor. The tumor was actually smack in the middle of my central channel. So the moral of the story is, don't be like me. Don't let your anger stick. And for God's sake, for Buddha's sake, don't die angry. It's a terrible death. And in life, I'm really pretty sure that it acts, the anger, stuck anger acts as an attractor for violent circumstances. So I'd just like to take a little break now. The surgery actually paralyzed my tongue. And I mean, you know, I can use it now and you can understand me, but it does tire out quite a lot. So I'm just going to take a few breaths and hand back the searing. And then just, there's a little bit more I really want to tell you. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Julie.
Mm.
I've heard parts of your story before, and every time it just moves me so much. And I don't know, you're saying don't be like me, but you've certainly made up for it since that past life, that's for sure. We'll now sit for a few minutes and reflect on what our response might be if we were in a similar situation to Julie, with a prognosis of possible a short time to live. We'll just sit and contemplate that for a few minutes. We can think about being in the hospital, possibly saying goodbye to our loved ones. As Julie said, suffering all around us. and our souls also suffering tremendously. We might be thinking about all the things that we hadn't attended to, like the writing the will, making preparations. I'm sure we'd be really comforted to know that our Sangha and our teachers were making prayers for us. And then the relief if we do come back, as Julie did. The will to live, and we'll now return to Julie to hear about her time of rehabilitation, which is pretty much an ongoing process.
The last thing I'd like to tell you about was how it was having to face death over and over after the surgery. So the tumor actually was really large, and it extended up into my brain and right down into my neck and my spinal cord, and it was malignant. The surgeon said that they weren't sure that they got it all, which is actually a really kind way of saying they didn't think they got it all. But there's only so far that you can shave down into somebody's brain stem, where everything is that runs the whole show. There's only so far you can shave down and leave someone with a usable life. So I had 33 doses of radiation therapy to clean it up. So every 3 months, I had to go back to the hospital and have a brain scan to see if it was back. And every time I had a headache or felt dizzy, which is pretty often after brain surgery, it's like, oh my God, is this it? So I had to deal with the fear or go completely bananas. So I'd read a book by Lama Sutram Alione called Feeding Your Demons. a couple of months before I was diagnosed. In it, she offers a process based on the Chod practice where anyone, Buddhist or not, can bring up a problem. So, cancer in the head or death, that was mine, or, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, whatever. Bring up something that as a problem, like, I have a problem that's separate from me. You bring up your problem, and instead of trying to get rid of it and fight with it, you actually feel it, face it, and feed it. So you feed it. You feed it what it actually needs, and it automatically transforms into a beneficial energy that is a protector. So I worked a lot with the demon of cancer in the head to keep transforming the pattern of the cancer. And I decided to work regularly with the demon of death as well. I couldn't get away from it. I was confronted by it so often. So I just turned into it, like, okay, let's do it. I'll just tell you one of the processes I did so you can see what the use of it is. So I felt into what it was like facing my death soon. I felt the fear in my body as physical sensation, and then projected that out in front of me as a being. It appeared as a huge, black, metallic, menacing automaton that had a dagger, and it was actually ticking like a clock. So this was my mind's projection of the fear of this scary enemy, death, coming to get me kind of relentlessly. I asked it what it needed, fed it that, and when it had all of what it needed and it was satisfied, it transformed into a luminous black sphere that was luminous emptiness. I sat with that. And then it became this huge, fierce black goddess who was looking at me with great compassion. She was my ally and protector. So this ally, this goddess, was the transformed energy of my fear of death. She said she'd help me see through everything, all of it, life and death. In the process, like this is the way the process goes, I received the energy of the ally, then she dissolved into light and dissolved into me, and then I dissolved, and then I sat for a while in the space of deathlessness. It left me with this profound sense of peace and the confidence that I could face death when the time comes. It's like, I did this process quite a few times, and I'm familiar now with all my projections of death and fear and what I think it means and all of that. And not that I've completely transformed death. I mean, if someone came in here with a gun, I'd be off like a, I'm not totally beyond it, but what it's given me is the confidence that this is doable, that this is workable, this death thing. Anyway, that's all I had to say. So I hope that was useful. Thank you for listening. I'm so sorry I've gone over. It doesn't really leave any time for questions.
No, that's absolutely fine, Julie, and everyone, please feel welcome to ask your questions, to unmute, and if you have any questions for Julie about her experience and And also, if you would rather put your question or comment in the chat box, you can do that, and Annie Zangmo will read them for us. Yeah, just as you feel. And once again, I just want to thank Julie so much for joining us. And well, probably most people don't know, but Julie continues her really valuable work as a doctor, and yeah, has helped so many people. And recently, during the flood disasters here in the Northern Rivers, she was helping people with trauma and loss and fear of death. She's just a really remarkable lady. So I think there are some questions popping up there.
A lot of comments coming in, but I'll just... So from Winnie, what an inspiration, Julie. Is there a link to that practice you mentioned?
I think, Searing you put a link
Yes.
up for that, yeah?
Yes, you'll find the link, Winnie, in their Living as Dying resources. I think it will come up there.
And I'm asking something which isn't on there, but is there also a link to your book, Julie, that you referred to that you'd written? Or how do we get to that?
There isn't, because it's not published.
Ah.
So if there's anyone out there in the publishing industry, I'd love to hear from you.
All right, we'll try and find you an agent.
Thank you. I really do want to get this book out there.
Yeah. Some more
It's a
comments?
pity for it not to be known, not to be
Yeah.
heard.
The next comment, thank you, Sister Julie, for your kind, inspiring, sharing and precious reminder for us to remember to live our lives meaningfully and practice well according to the Buddha Dharma. It is our blessing that you are doing fine now and having an opportunity to share your personal experiences and spiritual insights with all of us. May you continue to be blessed with superb health and long life to benefit more people. May you, your family and home always be blessed with joy, love, good health, abundance and auspiciousness. Om Mani Padme Hum. That was from Lizzie Woon.
Hear, hear.
From Nicolette, thank you so much, Julie, for sharing your experience with us. So moving and powerful, so invaluable. From Ruth Beach, thank you so much, Julie. You have given us a huge gift. From Admin, who I never know who Admin is, but I know Admin's face. Profoundly beautiful and poignant story. I learned so much from your perspective on death, Julie. Thank you so very much for sharing with us. Leona, thank you, Julie. Deepest thanks for profound teaching through your experiences. Wow.
There's a lot of thank yous.
Thank you so much for profound sharing. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Julie. How do I proceed with donating some dollars for prayers for deceased people?
Thank
you for today.
Yes, we can put something about that in resources. Yeah, but if that person would like to email me, saring@siddharthasintent.org, I'd be happy to pass on that information to you directly. Recently, with a passing of a friend, I realized that it's something that it's really good to have written in our will, to have an amount of money set aside to have prayers done by the lamas and monks, and it's something that we can pre-arrange and organize.
Okay, I'm going to keep going with the thank yous and appreciations. Oops, I'm having trouble.
I'm just noticing in the chat that Ulrika, who's a close student of Lama Sutra, has put a connection, a link to a YouTube on feeding your demons with Lama Sutra Malayomi. Can you see that, Ulrika?
Great. Well, I can't see it yet, but we will be able to. I'm still up the top at all the thank yous, Julie.
I don't know that everyone would want to hear all the things.
Oh, well, let
I
me just
really
keep
appreciate
going down. I'll keep going. I'll look for some questions. Amazing. Yes, here's the YouTube for feeding your demons. More thank yous. I'm looking for questions. Thank you. My heart sings. I have to read that one. Couldn't have got through it without your help. That's a personal one from Sonia. Precious to hear your experience. Wishing you good health. Perhaps you could publish as a Kindle book on Amazon. That's a suggestion.
I actually might be going to do that.
Uh-huh.
Actually, could I just say, I think when Searing put it up on the Living is Dying site, sorry, I'm not actually clear about this, Searing, but there is a link to, I've got a little website for my book.
Yes.
And if anyone is interested in the book, I will publish it somehow. If you are interested, you can go in. You can go into my website and just put your name so that I can contact you when I have published it. Siri,
Yes,
put that.
yes, that link is together with your bio, Julie, on the Siddhartha's Intent Living as Dying website.
Okay.
It's together with the bio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So no more questions, and I know you saw the comments.
I've seen all the comments and they're just beautiful. Really heartening. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Julie, and thank you, Josh, for being here too. Oh dear. So now we had best dedicate the merit from this amazing sharing, and Ross will screen share the dedication prayer, which is from Tucker and Vishay, Julie's main teacher. We're just getting the dedication prayer up on the screen. Something's happening there. Yeah, here it is. This virtuous accumulation of merit we offer, so that all obstacles dissolve, and that at the time of our death, each of us may find ease in dying and swift rebirth in the pure land of great bliss, quickly gaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now, if the material presented today has raised any concerns for you, is suggested you speak with a trusted friend, your personal health professional, or your Buddhist teacher or instructor. And next week we'll begin Chapter 5, Aspiration Practice, with guest speakers Margaret Hassett and Venerable Bo Ray, and Annie Zangmo as facilitator. So we hope to see you next week, and thank you once again, Julie, and everybody for attending. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank
Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you,
Sharing. Thank you, Annie Dharma. Thank you.
Thank you,
Julie.
Thank
Wish
you.
you good health, Julie.
Everyone.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you,
Okay.
Sarah.
Thank you, Tsering. Thank you, Annie Dharma.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you everybody so much.
Mantra of thank yous.
And another one, thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Good
Bye.
night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Great work, Tsering. Great. Thank you so much, Julie. It was really incredible to be listening to your experience and such a vulnerable, raw, open space. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I, as you can imagine, don't often have the chance to talk to anyone
That
about
was
this.
really beautiful. It touched us all, I think,
Have
deeply.
such profound blowing up of the old brain. And not be able to, like, it's useful. People should know, that's all.
Yeah.
Very
and
special. Very
and
special.
especially the idea of, you know, that thing of Sangha being able to support through prayer, that we've got an opportunity to help through prayer. It's so special.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that you've transformed it into this incredible helping of other people. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for all your incredible help through the floods. It just got me through that worst of it. And I'm very
Really
grateful.
glad. I'm really glad, sweetheart. I hope you're okay.
Yes, I am. And yes, thanks to you and the rest of the Sangha. It's incredible help.
Sangha is so important.
Isn't it? It's just so incredible.
Heart family.
Thank you, Tsering. Latu.
Okay. Yeah, Sangha, it is so important. That's why it's part of our refuge, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Yeah.
Well, this whole project that you put together, Tsering, has been so beneficial. You know, we can greatly rejoice in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Janchit. Yeah.
Okay.
Very timely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Lots of love, everyone.
Lots of love.
Bye.